Hey everyone, I'm Madan Mohan. Today I'm going to talk about what is JavaScript and how it has evolved over the years and what are the prerequisites in order to get started with learning JavaScript. Now, what is JavaScript? Actually, JavaScript was first introduced in order to create interactive web pages. It has evolved over the years, it has been diversified. Now we can actually create a complete web or mobile applications, chat applications, and also video streaming services as well using JavaScript. Actually, it had a name called LiveScript. Now, why it has changed to JavaScript? What's the story behind it? Just because at that time Java was much popular and these guys wanted to make use of that name and take it to this LiveScript into the market. So it has renamed to JavaScript. So absolutely there is no relation between Java and JavaScript. Both are different. Now, what are the prerequisites in order to get started with JavaScript? First one is HTML. Basic knowledge of HTML is required. Now, what is HTML? HTML is simply a markup code which can actually help us in order to structure the web pages. Now the second one is CSS, cascading style sheets. The CSS can actually help you to make your HTML pages design rich. So with the basic knowledge of HTML and CSS, you can get started with learning JavaScript. See you in the next video. Today, I'm going to show you how to write your first program using JavaScript. Before we see that, first we need to know what are the tools which are required to get started with writing programming. First tool is code editor, where you can actually write and edit your program. In order to write this, there are plenty of code editors out there in the market, starting with Notepad++, Visual Code Studio like this. But if you are a fresher and getting started with programming, then try to make use of Notepad++. Just because if you are using Notepad++, you should supposed to write each and every line manually. As you're writing the programming manually, it will be easy for you to remember the syntax of the program. So try to use Notepad++ if you are a beginner. Now the second one is browser. In order to check the output of the program that you have written, we need browser. Whatever the browser that you are comfortable, you can use it. But the recommended is Chrome. Alright. So if you have a code editor and browser, then you can get started with writing your first program. Now let me show you how to write your first program in JavaScript. Now you can see HTML programming here. If you have a bit of knowledge about HTML, you can easily understand this. HTML starting tag, end tag, head section and body section. Inside the head section there is a title. There's going to be the page title, and inside the body there will be a heading tag. Now let's see the output of this file. Let me save it first and click on run, launch in Chrome. See this, welcome is something that I have written in the H1. That's why you see H1 in the output. Now this is the title, my first program. Just because I have written this my first program in the title, that's why it is displaying. Now, in order to write JavaScript program in an HTML document, there are two ways to do it. The first way is directly writing JS program in a HTML document. Let me show you. Just because you're writing JavaScript inside the HTML document, we make use of the script tag so that browser easily understands the script. Script and script closing, and in between you need to write the script that you want to write. Now I want to log a message in the console. For that, console.log double quotes. Now you need to remember this. Whenever you have written a statement in JavaScript, it should terminate with semicolon. Now inside this console.log, I want to log a message. So you need to write that message in between the quotes. This is a message that I want to log on the console. So before we check the output, first you need to save. After saving this, let's run it again. You see the same output. Just because you are logging the information in the console, you need to check it in the console. For that, just right click on inspect, then developer console will open up. inside which you'll have a console tab. Click on it. This is where you can check the information that you logged using the script. This is one way of writing JavaScript code inside a HTML document. Now the other way is, instead of writing JS code directly onto the HTML document, we can simply create a separate file for JS with .js extension. Now just because it's an HTML document, you see this one has saved on the name of index.html as an extension. Why? Because it's an HTML document. Now we are going to create a separate document for script that ends with .js extension. Let me create a new one here. Double click so that a new one will open up, and let me write the same JS code on this file. Just because it's a JS file, script tags are not required here. You can directly write JS code. Let's save it. Provide a name, and it should end with .js and save. Now, after creating a separate file, you need to integrate this JS file in the HTML document. How to do that? Let's go to the HTML document. So here, inside the head section, we'll do integrations. Whenever you want to integrate something to your website, generally we'll make use of this head section. Let's integrate this main.js in head section. Type script src. src indicates source. As we are going to integrate the other file inside this file, you should supposed to give the path of the JS file that you're going to integrate here. Close this and close the script tag. Now here you should supposed to give the path of this main.js that you have created. Just because these two are on the same folder or on the same location, these two are saved in desktop. So you can simply provide name of this JS file, that is main.js, and save. That's it. Now before we check the output, let me change this message so that you understand the difference. And save this. Let me run this again. Let's right click, inspect, check the console. Now see this. These are all the two ways in order to write JavaScript programming on a web page. Now, out of these two, which one is best? You should always try to create external JS file and integrate that JS file on a HTML document. That is the best way to go with. Don't write JS program directly into an HTML document. Reason for this is, if you have a separate file for writing JS, wherever you want that particular JavaScript code to be run, you can directly integrate this JS file on any other HTML document that you have on your website. And also, if you have written more JavaScript inside the HTML document, that might hamper your website speed as well. Make sure you have a separate external files in order to write JavaScript. Today I am going to talk about DOM, Document Object Model. We should understand this. In the coming classes, by making use of this JavaScript, we'll be making changes to the DOM elements. Now, starting with document. Document is simply nothing but a file. It could be a text file or document file or HTML file. In our case, let's consider HTML file. Simply a document. Now the next one is object. Let's consider HTML file, inside which it starts with doc type. Now this doc type is one object. Next one is HTML starting, HTML closing. This HTML tag is another object, inside which you will have head tag and body tag. This head tag is one more object, body tag is one more object. Like this, each and every tag that you have written inside your HTML document are considered as objects. This is how the program that you have written inside the HTML document will be rendered before it starts displaying in the output. So all the tags which you have written inside the HTML documents are considered as objects. Alright. Now the next one is model. Model is nothing but structure of your web page. Let's consider the same example starting with HTML, inside which we have two objects called head and body. Now this head and body will comes under HTML. I can say HTML is the parent under which we have two objects, head and body. Alright. Now coming to the body, again we have multiple objects, h1, paragraph tab, image tag, like this. So the whole structure will call it as model. That's it. This is about DOM, document object model. This is very important to understand before we get into implementation, just because by making use of this JavaScript we are going to make changes to DOM elements inside HTML. So in the coming classes we'll be seeing how to make changes to the DOM elements. Example, adding classes to the paragraphs or h1 tags, or inserting text in between the tags. Like this we can do so much of stuff. Believe me, it will be so much fun playing around with the DOM elements. See you in the next video. What is a variable? A variable is simply a storage space. Variables can actually help us in order to store data. That's it. Okay, consider it as a storage space. Now, in order to use these variables, how can we declare and how to use it? Let's say let is a keyword that we are using to declare the name of the variable. Let space name of the variable, employee name, and here I'm going to add Madan. Employee name is a variable here. I have declared it with a let keyword and also assigned a value Madan to it. But if you see this, Madan is a string. So whenever you are assigning a string to the variable, try to wrap up using double quotes or single quotes also fine. Quotation should be there. Either it could be a double quote or a single quote. Right? If you provide it this way, it understands that it's a string. Right? Let me declare one more variable. Let designation and it is web developer. This is the designation. I've declared two variables here and two variables got assigned with data. Now here you need not declare data type when you are declaring a variable. Based on what type of data that you are providing, this variable will be automatically store that data. There is no specific saying that you should supposed to decide before you going to assign a value. No, you need not do it here. You can simply create a variable and you can assign any type of data. What I mean by data type, here it is a string. Whenever I want to add a number, that's an integer. And when you want to add a float point number, 1.5, 2.5, like this, you can add it. So there is no need to declare data type before you assign data to a variable in JavaScript. You can simply declare it and you can add value to it. This is how you can create a variable and you can assign the data. Now what happens if you've done it this way? This Madan will get stored inside this emp name, employee name. The employee name variable will hold this data Madan inside it. Now whenever you want it, you can display it. Let's see that. I want to display this name. For that I am using console.log, and inside which you need to provide this variable. Let's save and run this. I can see only welcome here. Why? Because only one h1 tag is there. In order to check the output, we should supposed to check inside the console. Right click, inspect, and here it is. See here, a Madan has been logged in the console just because I have assigned Madan to employee name. Now let me quickly lock the designation as well. Go here, console.log. This time it's designation, and go here, refresh, right click, inspect console. See this. This is how you can assign any value to the variable, and you can even use it whenever you want it. Okay, fine. So far I just assigned strings. What if I want to assign number? Let salary equals to, let's say, 90,000. Now there is a difference here. Whenever you are adding a number, you should not wrap it inside the quotes. Only string should be wrapped inside the quotations. Okay, don't wrap number inside the quotes. What happens if you wrap a number inside the quote? That also will be considered as a string. Simply, if you add a number inside the quotation, this will think that this number is also a string. I'll show you the difference in a while. I'm going to show you math functions. There you could see the difference, right? For now, let's log the salary as well. Console.log salary, save, go here, refresh, inspect. Alright, this is how you can store the data and you can retrieve it whenever you want. Now, let's go to do some math. I'm going to add one more variable called x, and I'm adding a number into it. As I mentioned, you should not wrap inside the quotes. Let x is 100, and one more thing, y 200. Save. Now 100 and 200 got saved in x and y variables. Now I want to do some math here. Let's do that. I'm going to assign one more variable where I'm just going to store the output. After performing math on this x and y, the data has to store somewhere in order to retrieve it. Alright. So let sum is a variable that I am declaring. After that, x plus y. 100 has got stored in x, 200 has got stored in y. Now I'm just trying to provide x plus y here. Now the addition will be performed on x and y. The output will get stored inside the sum. In order to check that, log the sum here. Console.log sum. Go and check the output. Right click, inspect, console, see here, it is 300. Now I'll show you the difference. Why I mentioned you should not use quotations in order to wrap the numbers. Let's try to do that and see how the output will be. Now you see this output is 300, right? Let's wrap this inside the quotes. I mentioned this will be considered as a string. So this time go here, refresh, inspect, console, see this 100, 200. Why? Because this 100 and 200 will be considered as strings. Whenever you try to use plus symbol between two strings will get concatenated and displayed it on the output. That's what you have seen. 100 plus 200, just because those are wrapped in quotations, they are considered as strings. That's why you have seen 100, 200 in the output. This is why when you're adding a number, try to make sure you add it without quotes. Alright, this is about variables. Now if you want, you can check the output again. This time it should display 300. Here it is. This is about variables, and we will do lot more in the coming classes. Now, what is meant by a constant here? So for variables, if you want, you can reassign the value. That's what a variable is. Variable in the sense, you can reassign the value. Even though the value has been assigned it once, one more time if you want, you can reassign. That's what we call it as a variable. Let me quickly show you what I mean by that. So salary is 90,000 here. For the same salary variable, I'm just going to assign one more. This time it is just 10,000. Now, here I just declared it and I have given an input as 90,000 as a salary. Now, next in the next line, I've given 10,000 rupees. What happens now? Which value it gonna display when it hits with console.log? Is it 10,000 or is it 90,000 or it throws any error? Any guess? Anyone? Put it in the comment section. Okay, let me see that. Refresh, inspect, go here. See this. This can be override. That's what we call it as a variable. You can reassign the values anytime you want. Okay. First you have given 90, then you have given 10, and whenever I log the console.log here, it is displaying 10,000. What if I put this in between these two? This time, any guess? Let me know in the comment section what could be the answer. Let's check it. See this. First console.log has displayed 90,000 and the second one has displayed 10,000. This is how values can be changed inside the variable. Now, other one we are going to talk about is a constant. Name itself is suggesting it's a constant. You should not change the value once you assign it. Okay, in order to declare a constant, we use const as a keyword and followed by name of the constant. This time I am giving empid, employee ID. As you know, ID won't change. I am giving it as 2. Now let's log this. Console.log empid. Alright, let's go refresh and see. You can see ID is 2. Now I mentioned you should not reassign the value if it is a constant. Let's check what happens if I try to assign one more value to it. empid, it's a constant. I'm just trying to assign one more value here, 3 this time. Now what happens now? Will it display 3 or 2 or it throws an error? Give it a try. Anyway, let's see the output. See this. Uncaught type error, assignment to constant variable. You are just changing the value to the constant. It's not allowed. That's the difference between a variable and a constant. So this is all about variables and constants in JavaScript. Today I am going to talk about interactions in JavaScript. If you want to interact with audience, what options that we have and how can we do that? We can make use of alert, prompt and confirm, right? Let's start with alert. So if you observe in the previous video, we have used console.log to get the output. And just because I used console.log, output is displaying in the console. Instead of displaying it onto the console, if you want to display on the web browser, alert is something that we can use of. If you use alert, simply a pop-up will be opened. Inside the pop-up, data will be displayed. If you wanna see let's alert this sum and see the output. Alert sum. Sum is a variable which is holding the data of these two, x plus y. Math will be performed here. 100 plus 200 will get stored inside the sum, and I'm trying to alert the information which is stored inside the sum variable. Now let's see how it displays. Save this. Let's go to the index file and run. See this. This is how the alert box looks like. We can make use of this alert in order to display information to users. This is one way to display, but if you use alert, this is a default alert box inside which user will see the information, and there is nothing that user can perform here. Only one option will be available, that is OK. Once he sees the output, user can simply click on OK so that a pop-up will get disabled. This is about alert. So we can use this alert box in order to display the information to users. In the previous step, if you see, we have declared a variable and we stored the data after performing a math, and we try to lock this sum. Instead, one more way is alert, inside which you can directly add x plus y. So we can actually directly add these two inside the alert as well. You can see the same result. Let me remove this. Else comment. If you want to make this one comment, why? Because one alert is already, I want to make this alert work. So I just want to disable this alert. In case of that, we'll make use of the comments. When you comment this code will be ignored. So it won't be displayed in the results. So how can we comment it? In JavaScript, we can use two slashes in order to comment a single line. In case if you want to comment multiple lines, on that case, one slash star space. I want to comment these two lines. Let's go here. This time star, then slash. Now this is multi-line comment. If you want to comment more than one line, you should supposed to use like this, slash star and star slash at the end. This is how you can do multi-line comments. If it is a single line comment, let me show you. You can simply use this. This line got commented. This is single line comment and this is multi-line commenting. Now I just commented the old version, alert sum. That's what we have seen as an output before. Now I want directly perform math operation on x plus y inside the alert field. Let's check how the output will be. Save and refresh to see this. You can see the same result. So these are the two ways you can do it. This is about alert. Now the next one is prompt. How can we make use of this prompt? Let's say for example, we want to collect information from the user. In alert case, there is no option for user to provide the input. He can see the output inside the alert box and he can close the pop-up. There is no option to provide the input. By using prompt, you can take information from the user by running the program. Let's see how. Let's take an example. I want to collect age of the user. For example, let's type prompt inside which you can ask question, inside which what's your age. All right, save this, and before I go for checking the output of this prompt, let me comment this alert. Now my question is, what's your age? I want to collect age from the users. User will find an option to enter his age. Let's check the output. See this. What's your age? And just below it will give us one input field where user can enter the information. You're asking for age. Let's say 28. Okay. That's how you can collect the information from your users. Now, I simply collected the data. but I'm not storing it. In order to store the data, what you can do is you can assign one variable, let age equals to prompt. Now, whatever the information user is going to provide inside the prompt, that information is going to stored in is. Is a variable. Okay, if you wanna check whether it gets stored or not, let me alert this age. Now you can understand whether input is getting stored inside this age or not. So through prompt, we are going to ask user a question, and below the question, user will find an option to add the answer. Once after adding the answer, I want to store that answer into the age variable. I want to store that answer into the variable called age. Now, after storing it into the age, for a confirmation in order to make sure it got stored or not, I am alerting this variable. Now let's see the output. Let me save, refresh. Is 28. Okay, there it is. So whatever the input that you have provided through this prompt, that input is getting stored inside the age variable, and that age is getting displayed here inside the alert box. Let's try the other one. Refresh. Okay, see this. Prompt is allowing user to provide the input. All right. Now the next one is confirm. Using the confirm, user can actually give opinion saying that whether it is true or false. That means you can ask a question. If it is yes, he will choose okay. If not, he will choose the other option. Two options will be provided if you use confirm here. So user can go with the first or second. If it is true, that means if user choose the positive option, then it displays true. And if you choose the negative one, it displays false. Let me show you so that you can understand. Confirm. Let's ask user a question. For example, are you 30 years old? Right? Save this, refresh. It is asking, are you 30 years old? It's okay or cancel. No, I'm not 30 years old. Let's click on cancel. When I click on cancel, that is negative. That means false. How can I see that? True or false? Which option user has chosen? For that, assign a variable to this one. Let user input equals to. Now, whatever the option user is choosing, is it okay or cancel? Based on that, user input will get stored with either true or false. In order to understand whether this user input has been stored with true or false, we need to alert this user input here. Alert user input. Save. Refresh. Are you 30 years old? Of course, no. Say this. When I click on cancel, user input has been stored with false. So I just provided an alert statement here. So it is getting stored with false and it is displaying. Let's try this time with true. Refresh. Yes. Okay. Now see. True. So this is about how we can play around with alerts, prompts, and confirm in JavaScript. See you in the next video. Today I am going to show you how can we use conditional statements in JavaScript. I am going to talk about if and else statements. How can we write programming using if and else? Now in previous videos we have seen how can we assign a value to a variable and how can we do some math on it. With this conditional statements we have a luxury to display the output based on the condition. Let me show you the example here. Let age equals to 18. All right. Now I simply created a variable here and I have assigned the value 18 to it. Now my requirement is if age is greater than or equals to 18, then it should display you are eligible to vote in the console. Else it should display you are not eligible to vote. Let's implement with if. If parenthesis inside which age is greater than or equals to 18. After this, code block with flower braces. If the condition inside this parenthesis are true, then only the statements which we are going to include inside this braces, flower braces, going to be displayed. Let's say console.log is greater than or equals to 18, then message should be, let's check the output. Let's go to the console, save this, and let's check in the console. There it is. You are eligible to vote. All right. So condition has been met. That's the reason whatever the statement that you have added inside this flower braces has been displayed. What if I change it to 12? There's nothing here. Why? Because I didn't add any other statement. Here I just given a condition saying that if it is greater than, then only display this output. If not, it won't display anything here. That's where else will come into the picture. Else code block inside which console.log and refresh. You are not eligible to vote. This is how you can make use of if and else statements in order to get the output. Generally, we are going to use these conditional statements whenever you want to get the output based on a certain condition. So when the condition has been met, then only the code block has to be executed. Along with if and else, we have switch and case. We are going to see this in the next video. Hey everyone, I'm Madan Mohan. In this video, I'm going to talk about switch and case in JavaScript. So in the previous video, we have seen how to write programming using if and else in JavaScript. So before we talk about switch case in JavaScript, let me talk about else if condition in this. We just seen how to write if and else condition here. With if and else, we can check only one condition. If the condition is true, then the first one will get executed. If it is false, the second one will get executed. This is about if and else. What if I want to check one more condition? That's where else if will come into the picture. Let me change this a bit. Instead of age, let me take time variable here and let me set this time to 6. All right. Now let's change this to time. If it is less than 12, it should supposed to display good morning. Okay. Now the second condition, I want to write 3 conditions here. That's where else if will come into the picture. Else if condition time less than 16 and open the braces, write one more console statement here. Good afternoon. Else it should display good evening. Like this, in case if you want to check more than one condition, that's where we can use else if. And how many conditions you want to check, you can check with multiple else ifs. Here I just used one else if. In case if you want to check one more condition, you can repeat one more else if here. Like this, you can keep adding else ifs if you want. That's where this else if can be used. All right, let me talk about switch and case in JavaScript. Let me remove this and this one as well. First, you need to understand the syntax of switch and case. So it starts with switch and then you need to give the expression in it. Okay, expression needs to be provided inside this parenthesis and then code block, right? Inside which we'll add multiple cases. Case value needs to be provided here. Value, let's say value 1 colon. Next, if this value has been matched with this expression, then whatever you want to execute, that statement has to be passed here. Okay, console.log its value 1. Okay, once you're done with the first case, you need to break this line and go to the second case. We'll be adding multiple cases here. There's just the first case. We'll go for, before we go for a second case, we need to add a break. This break can actually help to terminate the block here. So go with the next case. Case this time value 2 colon, then console again. Display its value 2. Then again break. Now at the end, if you want to write the last one, instead of writing case, we'll put it as default console.log value 3. After the end of this default line, we need not use break. Now let me explain this. Whenever you have written an expression here, if this expression has matched with the value 1, then only this statement will execute. If not, it will go for the next one. As you have used the break here, it will come out of this case and it will check the second value. It will check again whether this value has matched with this expression or not. If it matches with it, then the second statement will get executed. If not, the last one, default one, will get executed and the last statement will get printed. In case of this two got failed, then the last one will get executed and it will get displayed on the output. Okay, let me write a program using this. I'm just declaring a variable here called fruit equals to, I'm setting it to mango. Now I'll add this fruit here. Now, so the mango got assigned to a variable called fruit. Let's replace this expression with fruit. Now whatever the value which is assigned to the fruit, we'll check with this values here. All right, let me provide the values. Inside the quotes, let's add apple. Now console should display apple. Break, second value is mango. Should add quotes. This time it should display it's mango. Then the default one would be, I'm just giving some random statement here. Okay, let's save this and check the output. Fresh and see. It has displayed it's mango. What if I change this to grape here, and if I refresh, now let's see, it's grape. So what you need to understand here is how it works. The example that I have shown you is just to make sure you understand the concept. Once you switch here, inside which you need to add an expression. If this expression has matched with the value inside the case, then only a specific code block will get executed. That's how it works. This is how you can make use of switch and case in JavaScript. Whenever we want to run a code block for multiple times, that's where these loops will come into the picture. Let's say, for example, if you want to display numbers from 1 to 10, and at the same time there has to be some condition. I mentioned number 1 to number 10. So once it has reached to 10, the loop should be stopped. In order to do that, there should be a condition. We have multiple ways in order to implement this. Let me start with for loop. Let a is a variable I'm declaring, and for I'm assigning a value here, a equals to 1, and second one is a condition, a less than or equals to. If you observe this here, I have assigned a variable called a, and inside the for loop I mentioned a equals to 1. That means I have assigned the number 1 to a. Next one, I put a condition if a is less than or equals to 10. Why? Because I want to print from number 1 to number 10. So this is the condition. As long as this condition is true, whatever the statement that I'm going to write inside this for loop going to execute. If this turn out to be false, then the loop will get stopped. So you won't see the output after 10. In order to continue this looping process starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, after the condition increment a plus plus, I'm going to explain how it gonna work, and you should open the parenthesis inside which you need to write the statement which needs to be executed every time this condition is true. Okay, what's need to be executed? I want to display a value which is there inside a. Let me write console.log. I want a to be displayed. Alright, now how it works? First, I have declared a variable a for a equals to 1. Alright, and it will go to the second step. Now in the next step, it will check what are the value which is there inside a is really less than or equals to 10 or not. 1 is less than or equals to 10. So this will go into the code block and check what is the statement inside it. Console.log is the statement and it will get executed, and whatever the value there in a will get printed. Next step, it will go to the third one and it is saying a plus plus. That means a equals to 1, right? It has been printed. 1 will get printed from the first step and it will go here a plus plus. Plus plus, in a sense, it's an increment. It will increment by 1. So 1 plus 1 equals to 2. Now a will be 2. It will check the condition whether 2 is less than or equal to 10 or not. It's true, then it will go into this and 2 will get printed. And the same way, it will go here and 2 will be incremented by 1, that is equals to 3. 3 is less than or equals to 10. 3 will get printed. Similar way, it will loop around till 10. 10 is less than or equals to 10. 10 will get printed. Now then the next step, 10 will be incremented by one number, that will turn out to be 11. So 11 is not less than or equals to 10. So this loop will get stopped here. Alright, this is how number 1 to 10 numbers will get printed. If you wanna see, let me execute this. So let's refresh and go to the console in order to see the output. See this. Okay, 1 to 10 got printed. This is how these loops will help us. So far we have seen just assignment to a variable and we just call the number. Manually we just added console.logs whenever we want to print the number inside the variable. Now you can see here it has been printed 10 times. If you don't have a concept called loops, we need to write this console.log statement for 10 times in order to print the numbers from 1 to 10. What if I want to print from 1 to 100? We need to write it for 100 times. What if it is more than that? So it is not feasible to go in that way. See, the first and basic point that you need to remember as a programmer, we should not duplicate the code. So with the minimal amount of code, we should suppose to get the output. Even though I required 10 or 100 or 1000, it doesn't matter. Number needs to be changed here. That's it. Those many times program will get executed. Let me show you. If I put 20 here, save, refresh, see this. This is the beauty of loops. Is for is the only way to implement the process? Not really. Along with for loop, we have while loop and do while loop as well. Now if you want to implement the same with while loop, simply in place of for, we'll be using while, and inside which we need to add a condition, a less than or equals to 10. Let me delete this. This time by default I am going to assign a value here. Let a equals to 1, and while a is less than or equals to 10, if the condition is true, I'm going to write the console statement here, console.log and a. Alright, now what is happening? First a will get assigned with number 1. If a is less than or equals to 10, then console will get executed. Alright, and how will it loop around? I should be incremented, right? So whatever the value that I have assigned to a is 1, right? 1 is less than or equals to 10. console.log a, in a sense 1 will get printed. After that 1 needs to be 2, 2 needs to be 3. So there should be an increment operator that needs to be there just below this console statement, that is a plus plus. Similar to for loop here, first a value, by default the value of a is 1. It will get started with one number. 1 is less than equals to 10. It's true. Console statement will get executed. After that a will be incremented by one number and it will check the condition here. As long as this condition is true, it will continue the process. Once the statement is false, then it will stop executing the code block inside the parenthesis. This is how it works. Let me save and see the output. Let me refresh. See this. Let me make it 5 so that you can see the difference. You can get the same output by making use of while also. So if you want to implement the same thing with do while, we can even do that. The difference between while and do while is if you use do while without checking a condition, code block inside the do statement will get executed definitely for the first time. Let me show you what I mean by that. Do, inside which we need to add a line of code which needs to be executed. This is the one. I want to print console.log. I want to print a here. So if you can see this, after assigning a value to a, I am asking to print it. There is no condition here to check. That's the reason. So first time it will get executed for sure. After that, we need to add a condition here in the while loop. So it will check for the condition and it will go here. But in between these two, we need to add an increment operator, a plus plus. Now let's refresh and see the output. So this is how we can make use of loops in JavaScript in order to execute a block of code for multiple times. See you in the next video. Today I'm going to talk about functions in JavaScript. Before that, so far we have seen how can we write coding using Notepad++. From now onwards, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, which is one of the code editor that we use for programming. One of the most familiar one. I generally use this Visual Studio Code for programming. First, you should suppose to go to code.visualstudio.com and you need to download this. Based on your operating system, you need to choose and you need to download the exe file and run it in order to install this one on your computer. This is just like any other software installation. Once you install it, you just open the Visual Studio Code editor and it looks like this. Now let me open the project. File, open folder, basics is the name of the project. Let me select it. Now you can see it got opened and inside which I have only index and main.js, one HTML file and other one is a JavaScript file. Let me open the JS file. This is what we have seen in the last video. Alright. Now today I'm going to talk about functions. What is meant by a function and why do we need to use this? A function is simply nothing but a code block which performs some action. Right? We'll be writing functions in order to make sure we use it wherever we want it. So these functions will generally help us in order to reduce the coding. The thumb rule about programming is while you're writing the code in order to achieve the desired result, we should suppose to write it in a less number of lines. These functions can actually help us to achieve it. Let's say in my project, I want to perform the sum on two values multiple times. On that case, you need not write the same logic multiple times. Instead, the same function can be called wherever you want it. That's where these functions can help us. So by making use of these functions, we can make sure we reduce the number of lines that we need to write to achieve the results. Alright, let me show you how to write a function. In order to write a function, we use a keyword called function space name of the function. Let's say sum is the function name followed by parenthesis. After that, we need to add the curly braces. This is the place where we need to write the block of code which needs to be executed when this function has been called. What I mean by function calling, I'll tell you in a while. So first thing that we need to do is create a function by making use of a function keyword and then write a block of code which needs to be executed. For example, I'm just writing console statement here. console.log. Hey there. All right. Now, this is the first step. First, we need to create a function. After creation of a function, we need to call this function. Then only execution will happen. Right? That's what function calling is, the second step. How to call a function? With the function name. Sum. This is what function calling is. Now I have created a function and I even call the function in line number 5. Let's see the output of this. I can see once after running this, it has been displayed on the console. Why? Because I have given console.log here. So while we are writing the functions, there are two things that we need to do. First one is function declaration. Second one is function calling. Unless you call this function, it won't get executed. Right? This is just a basic thing. Let me show you a few more. As I mentioned some here, let's perform some math. In order to do that, first we need to have variables. Let a equals to 10 and b equals to 20. I have declared two variables here, a and b, and I even assign values. After this, you can even declare value called c, where I am going to store a plus b. So I am performing math on these two values and I'm storing the value here, and in the console.log statement I'm going to print C. Alright, now let's see the output. Say this value is 30. Now you can play around with it if you wanna change it to multiplication. Let's refresh. You can see multiplication has been performed on this number. This is how we can use the functions. So far we just seen a simple basic function. We can even pass arguments to the function as well. That means here inside this parenthesis I am passing inputs. Technically we call this as an argument. So let's say a and b. I am passing a and b as two arguments to the function named sum. As we have passed the argument here, I am going to pass values. Here we have two arguments where I just pass two values here and see this. So this is how we can even pass arguments to the function as well. Whenever we pass an argument here, values can be passed while we are calling the function. Earlier in the first step, we have assigned the values manually inside the function. But here in this case, I just pass two arguments here, a and b, and the values for those can be passed while we are calling the function. These are all the basics about functions, how we can write a function and how can we make use of functions in JavaScript programming. Now, along with this, we have one more type called arrow function that we'll see in the next video. Today I'm going to talk about another way of writing a function which was introduced with ES6. It is arrow function. How to write an arrow function? Simply, an arrow function is a concise version of writing a function in JavaScript. Let me change this normal function which was written in the previous video into an arrow function so that you can easily understand the syntactical difference, and also there are other differences as well when we compare a normal function with arrow function. That we'll discuss in the later videos. So normal function will start with the function keyword. Here we don't need this one, you can remove it and let sum equals to a and b parameters, and we need to add an arrow here. This is how we'll write an arrow function, and we can replace these two lines with a single line. This can actually perform the same thing, that is a multiplied by b, and here we can even remove the parentheses as well, just because we have only one expression here inside the function. We don't even need this parenthesis. Right, this is what an arrow function is. When you're writing the arrow functions for the first time, syntax might look a bit confusing, but once you used with it, it will be a lot more easier to work with arrow functions. This is how you can write an arrow function in JavaScript. And also there's a link below in the description. You can check more about arrow functions. See, precisely if you want to talk about the differences between a normal function and an arrow function, coming to the usage of this keyword, the scoping varies with a normal function and a arrow function. So that we are going to discuss in the coming videos, because I am yet to introduce this keyword in the series. See you in the next video. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Madan again. Today I'm going to talk about arrays in JavaScript. How can we declare an array and how to add elements into it? How can we access the elements? All these things can be discussed in detail in this video. Let me show you first how to declare an array. Let name of the array, I am declaring it as team equals to. This is how you can declare an array. I have created an array on the name of team. It's an empty array. Now I need to add elements into it. In order to add elements, you can simply start writing the data. MSD, you need to separate multiple elements using comma inside the array. I have created an empty array on the name of team and I just added elements onto it. Now after creating this array, if you want to access the elements, how can we do that? Let's test. First, let's log this array and see how the output will be. You can see the output here. I try to log complete array. This is how the output looks like. Now if I want to access a specific element, how can I do that? You can observe here in the array, index will start with 0. That means whatever the first element that you have added, the index for the first element is 0. Start with 0, 1, 2, 3. Now by making use of the index, we are going to access elements inside the array. In order to do that, instead of console, let's say I'm using alert this time and I want to display MSD inside the alert box. How can I access the first element? As I mentioned, first element has an index value 0. Try to use it. Team square braces inside which you need to add the index value. Let's save it and check the output. Let's refresh. See this. As I have used alert box here, it has been displayed MSD. Why? Because I used index 0. Inside the first index, the element which is stored here is MSD. Let's try with the other one. I'm using 2 here. Any guess what would be the alert? Let's refresh. Okay, all right. This is how we can create an array and we can access any element inside the array. Now, what if I want to add one more element to the existing array? We have methods for that. By making use of the existing methods which are there in JavaScript, we can even add elements, we can remove the elements, all these things. Let me show you one by one. Let's say I want to add one more name to this array. Okay, now where do you want to add? Let's say I want to add it right next to Sachin. How can I do that? For this, we have a method called push. By making use of push method, we can actually push an element into the array. Let's see how can we do that. Team dot push. What's the element you wanna push onto it? I want to push VVS. After this, try to alert team. Viru, this is just because of the alert which is there in the second line. Just click on OK and see this. Check the output here. I just try to log the complete array and what's the last one? VVS. Why? Because I just try to add VVS using a push method in JavaScript. This is how we can add an element to the array. In case if you want to remove an element, remember if you use a push method, the element will get added at the end of the array. That's what you see here. Searching is the last element which was there before. Now whenever I use push and try to push VBS into it, you can see VBS has got it at the end of the array. Okay, we have one more thing called pop. By making use of the pop, we can remove an element. Let's try that and see how the output looks like. Team dot pop save. After this, I want to write one more alert statement here so that you can see the difference before pop and after pop. All right. First alert, second alert, and the third one. See this. Now, by making use of the push method, we are going to add an element at the end of the array. Similar way, if you want to remove the element which is there at the end of the array, we can make use of pop. Along with these two, we'll have an option in order to play around with first element inside the array. Those are shift and unshift. Let's try and see how those two will work. Now let's comment team dot shift and check what would be the alert statement returns. Alert team save here, refresh, check the output. Now what has happened? Just because I used a method called shift, you can see the first element inside the array got removed. And technically what happens when you try to use a method called shift? First thing is it will remove the first element which is there inside the array. Once after removing this, it will try to reassign the indexes. Just because consider this at this moment in the 0th index, MSD is there and the Virat is there in the first, Viru is there in the second, Searching is there in the third, right? Now, just because I have performed a shift method on array, MSD will get removed from the team. Now the 0th index will get assigned to Virat and Viru gonna be the first, Searching gonna be second. These things will be performed as soon as you try to use shift method on any array. We can use unshift as well in order to add something at the front. Alright, now what if you wanna remove something which is there in between? For that we have a method called splice. Let me show you how to use splice and how can we remove the elements. Team dot splice. Inside the splice, it considers two inputs. First one would be index of the array and second one is the number, right? Which one needs to be removed? Let's say if I put 2, let's check the output. Save it. Alert. For now, let me comment all this. We have a complete array and I just performed splice on it with 0 and 2 as inputs. Let's check the output. Refresh. What is happened here? Viru, Sachin and VVS. First two elements got removed. Why? Because starting point has been given with an index number from 0. That means from beginning consider two elements. That's why first two got removed from the array and the last 3 got displayed. This is how we use splice. What if I mention 4 here? Refresh, check this. This 0 indicates a starting point from where I should suppose to start. 0 indicates right from the first element, 4 elements needs to be removed. All the 4 got removed and the 5th one has been displayed here. What if I change the index? I change the index to 1. Why MSD here? Just because I started with 1, you can see right from the first element, 4 elements got removed. 1, 2, 3 and the 4th one is VBS. Only MSD got displayed. You can see it here. This is all about arrays in JavaScript. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Madan Mohan. Today I'm going to talk about objects in JavaScript. Objects can actually help us in order to store the data, just like arrays. But here in objects, we'll be using key and value pairs in order to store the data. Let me show you how to create an object and how can we actually store the data and how to access it. Let's say I'm going to create an object called MS and I'm going to add values onto it. Currently, it's a new object which is empty. This is how we declare an object or we create an object. Let name of the object equals to flower braces. It's an empty object. Now we are going to add properties onto the object. In order to add properties, we are going to use key and value pairs. What exactly mean by a key and value? These keys can actually help us in order to access the value which is there inside. Okay, we'll be adding multiple properties inside the object. Each and every property value will be associated with a key. These keys can actually help us in order to access a specific value inside the object. Now let's see how to add the data and how to access it. Say ODI, rough numbers. Now here ODI is a key and this one is a value. Similar way, I'm going to add a few more here. A few things that you need to understand here. Key value pairs are separated with a comma. Next, one more thing, whenever I am adding a value here, if it is a number, we can actually directly add it. It is a string. String needs to be included inside the quotes. MS Dhoni is the name of the object inside which we'll have key value pairs. All the names before the colon are keys and after the colon are values. Now in order to access any value inside the object, we are going to use key. Let me show you how to access it. Alert. First let me alert complete object and see the output. Refresh. See, it is an object. Now in order to access a specific value inside the object, we are making use of the key. Let's see how it is. MS Dhoni dot ODI. See this. It is showing 300 just because ODI is a key which is associated with a value called 300. Let's try with the other one. Full name. See this. Like this, you can create an object and you can store any sort of data inside the object and you can access it whenever you want it. And also, is this the only way to create an object? Of course not. There is one more way in order to create an object, guys. Let searching, that is name of the object, and new object. This is another way of creating an object. This is all about how can we create an object and how to add data into it and how can we actually access the data inside the object.